Okay, so we don't, this is an item that we don't really have a policy for, but it's an issue that we face quite often. People come to us, and we also identify them ourselves, but more typically, people come to us and say, my water bill went sky high. We'll work with them to figure out what happened, and it's oftentimes a leak.
Yep.
So we have a practice more than a policy that says we'll do a bill adjustment. Couple of requirements. One is you have to verify, confirm that it is a leak. And we'll go back and we'll do like a history. We'll look at the water usage history. And if we see a deviation from history, like if they're using 10 units a month, all of a sudden it goes to 30 units a month. And then they can show a landscaper or a contractor can verify that there's a leak. And they can confirm that they've fixed it. We will do a bill adjustment. And again, lacking a policy, we rely on practices, but typically we'll do it for about a month period of time. And what the adjustment consists of is taking all the usage that was in the highest tier, in tier 3, and put it at tier 2 rates. So even if you have a leak, you're paying for 100% of the water that goes through the meter, you're just paying at a different rate.
Right.
So that's the adjustment. We haven't been completely consistent in our application. Usually with the tier 2, we're consistent with that, but the length of time may vary. We may go a little bit more or a little bit less than a full month. But I wanted to bring this to the committee to see if the committee was interested in staff developing a more formal policy that would help staff determine who qualifies and who doesn't. Because right now it's a little tough. Somebody comes in, and sometimes we tell people no, and we don't have a good reason to say no when they know we've done it for other people.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll give you an example. Some people may come in and say, oh, I had a power outage and my irrigation panel reset. So I was only doing 3 minutes per cycle, and when the power went out and my irrigation controller came back on, it reset it to 10 minutes a cycle, and my water bill went crazy. That is not something we typically make an adjustment for. It's supposed to be more for a water main break.
Right.
Or if you had a controller that broke and was letting water through, and can be fixed. It wasn't just because, you forgot to set it back, or you didn't turn it off during the rains or anything like that. But again, this is all kind of a practice that we apply. So be interested in hearing the committee's.
Well,
I'd like to hear Jim's.
I've
'cause
had
he's gone
firsthand
through it.
experience
Yes.
just recently.
Right.
And it's interesting because my water bill went up, but it was right during that hot session. And I went, okay, well, I'm using more water. Well, then the next month they called me at the end of the month because the meter was red and said, hey, Jim, you've had 2 months here of pretty heavy water. Well, okay, so I went out, dug around, found what was a valve had broken, but it wasn't broken. It was just constantly weeping, and then it was turning on the valves at my controller box. And so I had, when I mentioned it to Barbara, she said, well, no kidding, take a look at the tree. It's lush as ever.
Yeah, it's never looked that great.
And I just thought it was the. So anyway, so then I called and they said, well, Jim, you had a leak 5 years ago, so you're not eligible. I went, holy mackerel, let's talk about this. So, but then they did make the adjustment. We took the average, and their average was a little bit higher than mine, but over the since January, I was at about 10 and a little bit. And then it jumped to 29, 39. And then they made the adjustment, which I just accepted, and paid the difference.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess where I would like to look is, obviously, if you've got someone who's got breaks every 2 or 3 times a year, that's serious maintenance problems. But if you're 2 or 3 years since the last one, making this adjustment, it was $120 that I got returned back.
Right.
So it wasn't as though, I was taking thousands of dollars from the district. But I think if we set up a policy that within a year, if that happens, you make the adjustment and you're eligible for the differential.
So when you say within a year, so they'd be eligible once per year for
Yeah.
adjustment? That's your thought?
That's what I was thinking. But maybe that's too short. But 5 years seems too long.
Well, first of all, I would like to say I'm glad we at least make an adjustment And I do certainly agree with the fact that it, has to be an unknown leak or something that's happened, not someone who forgot to turn everything off when it rained, or
Yeah,
who suspected they had something obvious, their build kind of, but didn't do anything. I agree with that. But I do know that there are emergencies, and I certainly have had a couple here. Interestingly, on our property, I had two. I didn't get adjustment at all. I didn't even ask for one. And it was a lot more money than you're talking about. And I had two leaks. One was from an old line that was totally underground.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just it looks like there'd been a line and a line, and instead of cutting this line off way back when, whoever did, they just put a T in there, so the line kept kind of feeding around and teed
Right.
back in. It was, well, somewhere in the middle of the T, it broke. Nobody even knew it was a line there.
Yeah.
And it was, we have a slope, and we have a big property of 2.5 acres, so didn't know it, huge bill. And then got that, paid for that, took care of that, and then not right after that, kind of in the same area, a sprinkler, there was a old riser, I guess was a faucet or an old riser, and it just broke off. And was shooting right up into a bush, but it was a big, thick bush, nobody knew, till our neighbor called and had their garage flooded. So those were within maybe 6 weeks of each other, so I would have been in trouble for that. But they were true emergencies, and I also had the same thing in Arizona when they had, my pipes froze with renters. Froze, got it fixed, 2 months later froze again.
Oh,
So they were very nice and accommodative, and they actually removed the excess, but I think that once a year is not too often to allow it. I kind of agree with him. I don't know that you should be punished for having emergencies. But you also need to know you're gonna keep a history, and if it turns out you have something every year, then we might begin to think something's going on.
right.
well,
But I agree with the timing.
mm-hmm.
Just because you had an emergency doesn't mean that you couldn't have another one, realistically. So I'd like it to pertain to emergencies, if you can verify it was a problem.
A break of
A
some
break,
type.
a break.
Yeah.
If you can confirm it and confirm that you fixed it, I think that we should consider what you did, that we adjust. And I kind of like the adjustment of, we don't just, wipe the money off like they did in Arizona. They said, well, you just don't have to pay more than you normally did. And they
Right.
were talking a lot of money there. So, I feel that this idea of dropping it down to second tier and the adjustment, but I didn't quite understand what you said, over a month. What was,
Well, so if somebody comes in and says, hey, my water bills was really high, and when I looked at my bills, it's actually been really high for the last 4 months.
okay,
Would we go back 4 months and adjust, or just the current month that we're in? So that's what I meant. We typically just look at the last month, the month that that caused them to complain about it.
okay.
But there are oftentimes, we do get people that say, or when in our research, they'll bring it up and we'll look back and say, wow, it really looks like this happened 3 or 4 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have a policy that says how far back we should go. We don't have a policy that says how much of a financial adjustment is the district willing to consider. If they have a large meter and it's a $5,000 adjustment, so we don't cap it. So I think there's a good need for a policy.
Mhm.
Kind of cap the district's exposure and
Right.
still recognize the hardship that it puts them through.
In my case, it was a 3-month program. And the first month, I just assumed it was the weather, more water.
Right.
And then the second month, when they called me, it was at the end of the second month. So, when they read the meter. And so I wasn't able to get to the fix until the 6th, 2, 4, that's 10th week
Yeah.
of the leak. So, I mean, certainly it's trained me now. I'm looking at the bill every time. If it's over the 10 or 12 units that I've ever used, I'll be turning the damn water off and figuring out what's going on. Which brings me to another point, because when I first went out there to look, and I looked at my meter, it was changing a digit every 20 seconds. And I went, well, that cannot be a gallon of water. I mean, I did the math on that. That's a lot of water.
Yeah,
So then I figured, well, maybe it's 100th or 1/10, and so maybe I need, or maybe somewhere we need to put in how to read your meter.
yeah, we're actually working on a series of videos that we're
Great
gonna put on
idea.
our website,
Oh,
and that's
great.
one of them.
Oh,
So people can get on our district page, go to library of videos, how do you read your meter, and we'll probably make,
Perfect.
not all meters are the
Great
same,
idea.
we have different types of meters, so.
well, I
we
have
can
a
show
new
people.
one, because the old one I knew, because it was something .00,
Right.
and it was 100th of a gallon, and so I knew how much. But this is all just a bunch of numbers, and then when it was flipping over so rapidly, I went, oh, if that's a gallon, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
I turned everything off, but
Yeah.
I don't think it was, and that's,
you know,
but still,
Director Hernandez's experience isn't that atypical. Oftentimes, we identify the leak before the property owner does.
absolutely.
We have it automated that when we do the bill reads, it'll compare to like previous months or your average over a certain period of time. And we have parameters set up that if it exceeds those parameters, we'll notify the customer, says, hey, it looks like your usage is high. Now, sometimes maybe it's because they put in a new pool.
Yeah.
They used a lot of water that week, and that's a one and done. And when we start investigating these, whether it's brought to our attention by the customer or if we initiate it, we always do some research, and we'll look at things like, we'll ask them questions, did you put in a pool or a hot tub, or did you plant a new lawn, or, you know, there's things that may explain why your bill use went up, and that's fine. And we're certainly not gonna make an adjustment if somebody put in a pool.
Right,
But if they can say, hey, as part of putting in a pool, they cracked a line, and then even after I filled my pool, my usage was still high, that's something we will make an adjustment for.
you probably need to reinforce that question a little more, because they didn't ask me about any of that.
Okay.
Hey,
It's
you-
probably because of your.
Yeah, they just know I'm
Yeah.
a loser, so they,
Yeah.
you got too much
They
water.
call you every month, it seems
I
like.
know. I'm the poster boy for every problem the board.
Poster boy.
that the
Oh.
district has. But nonetheless, you know, they did finally call me, and as soon as they did, I went out and at least watched the meter and checked to see if anybody in the house had water turned on. And when I found none that was on, I went, well, there's something happening here.
Right.
So then I went further into the investigation, and I found it ultimately. And it was, you know, it wasn't obvious, it was the same type of a thing. The valve was there behind the branches of a tree. It wasn't seriously wet,
Yeah,
and then when I finally dug it up, you could just see it oozing out.
24
And
hours a
then-
day.
And absolutely, and then
Yeah.
going down and turning on the other valves, which turn the water on my drip system. See, that's the problem with drip. You don't know what's going on.
Right,
The Rainbirds, you know,
You
what
know
the
it.
heck's that going on for?
Exactly.
So the,
It's
you know,
very
the drip
difficult.
system was on day and night for
yeah.
2 months.
So Chris knows this better than I do, but we have a program, it's the residential landscape audit, or whatever it is. So if people have concerns, or if we identify a concern, I forget the name of the group, Mission
Yeah,
Conservation
mission resources.
Oh, really? They come out?
Yeah, they'll
They
come
come
out to
out
your
and audit
house,
your whole place.
they'll do a
Really?
landscape audit. They won't go in your home.
Yeah,
They-
right.
They will if you want.
If you want, but they,
They do go in your home, as I've had done, they will go in your home and put the blue dots in the toilet
Okay,
to see if
see
you
if
have a
they're
toilet leak.
Uh-huh.
And they're very good, and they point out inefficiencies as well as if there's some major thing. We have a little bit of a challenge, I think, in addressing this, simply because there's several things that go against the layman, and that is, one, you go for drip and it's hard to see what's happening. If you go on automatic payments, I mean, I watch my bills really close, but a lot of people just, as long as it's being paid, they're not looking at the
they don't
amount.
even open up their bill. Yeah,
No, and if you're on automatic, half the time it's online anyway, and you just, you know, you don't pay attention the
Right.
same way you do. I know several people have said that. I also think that there's a little bit of a challenge with our smart controllers that you get, because you just sort of get this thing in your head. It's smart, and it'll know when to shut it off and when to do it. And that's not true, because if you have, you know, dirt on top of it, or you have it in the wrong place, or the tree grows, that changes it. Not everyone who installed, I mean, there's all kinds of challenges. And even the underground watering now, I was reading how you're supposed to, if you put the underground for your sod and stuff, that you should have one pop-up cap so it pops up so you know when it's
Yeah.
watering under there, because you don't see anything.
right,
So I think it's real important, and maybe one thing we could suggest as suggestions is if you've had this leak, is that part of, just a thought, part of having to say, well, adjust your bill, is that we ask them to allow an audit to be done. Cause I think that would be very useful for them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So we would require that an audit be done as part of the
I
bill
think
adjustment?
it would be a good
What is it-
idea.
does
It
that
doesn't
cost?
cost you anything.
Doesn't cost them,
No,
what
it
about
It
us?
just cost us.
It costs us.
What does it cost us?
You know, a typical one, the water authority pays the other half of it, and so, you know, it's $60 or something
Oh,
like
that's
that.
$60.
terrible.
Okay.
I mean, we don't have, how often does this happen, either per month or per year, that we have this kind of a situation come up?
You know, couple dozen maybe, I mean, it's not hundreds, and I don't think, Mike, you may know better.
Yeah, you're probably right into it, the dozen.
Yeah, it's.
A dozen?
It's
No.
not,
So it
it's not
doesn't, so
rampant.
we're talking
Yeah, so you're talking
$600 or
less
than-
$700.
But here's the thing, so that's how many times it gets caught. I don't know how many are actually occurring out there. That's probably hundreds that it's happening to people, and they're paying a water bill that's bigger, and more importantly, they're wasting water without knowing it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, our systems in place are, I wouldn't say they're super refined. So if people average bill is 10 units a month, if they go up to 11 or 12, we're probably not gonna
Yeah.
raise it.
No.
If they go up to 30, we'll do it, but they may be wasting 5 units a month because they have a leak and they're not aware of it, and then pretty soon at the end of 10 years that they've lived there, it's, you know, a lot
Huge
of water
amount of
that
water.
going through there. In the long run, I think, if we went to an automated metering infrastructure, the
Oh, yeah.
AMI, that'd be helpful, but that's a multi-million-dollar
Oh, yeah,
investment on
that-
the part of the district.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and we're investigating it, we're looking into that. I just had a conversation with Livenhain at the event last week
Mhm.
about partnering with them on a pilot project. So, and we may learn from that, we may go full into it, but even that, it's not to the level of detail that will catch
Yeah.
usage at smaller amounts. It'll catch the bigger ones.
Well, I think the 1 year time period is great. I think, as part of the video, that in reading the meter, I would think that we might interject in there, look at your bill. If it's 20% higher, something's wrong,
Yeah,
call the district. Because, if my bill, which is, when I did my average, I think it was about 10.5. If we would've got to 12, I wouldn't have made a big deal. If it got to 15, I would've gone, well,
Yeah.
something's not right here. And then, and then call the district, and then perhaps you direct me, well, turn your water off, see if it's still
Yeah.
working.
the problem with averages is that, the seasonal usage is so different.
Yeah.
So your average may be 10, but it's not uncommon that in the summer you may use 20.
But
Or
you can look
25.
at your bill, and it tells you what your monthly
Right.
rate is, so you can look, okay, in August of last year, I used 12 units.
Right.
This year I'm using 20.
What's different?
And that's what we try to do. We don't just look at average, we'll look at month-to-month
Yeah.
comparison over a
Mhm,
year
mhm.
and see. But sometimes a previous owner, you got a new owner and he uses water in
Yeah.
a very different way than the owner did before. So the past bills may or may not be an indicator. But when we identify it, we're just trying to put it on the person's radar screen. We're not
Yes.
saying you have a problem, we're just saying your usage is not typical.
Change.
Right.
Something's happening and you may wanna take a look at it.
Well, when they called, and then I finally recognized, I went from 150 to 250.
Yeah.
I said, there's something wrong
There's
here,
something
Jim.
wrong.
I gotta go look. Then I saw the additional units, so I then made it upon myself to take care of it, so.
Right. So, well, I guess we'll wait till the end, you have a speaker.
I do, I have a speaker, and I just asked if, Michael Hunsack would like to speak.
I'm addressing two issues. One is, I'm on my third meter right now, which is pretty unusual.
How long have you been there?
20 years.
Okay.
First meter lasted about 16 years or something like that. Then I requested to get one of the digital meters in there. And people came out and put a digital meter there, and I saw a big rise in my water bill. Not anything spectacular, but I usually monitored that pretty closely, and there was 5 units a month I could not figure out what was going on. And I went out and had the digital meter, and it was the one that has a little ball going around so you could see the thousandths of a unit. And what I found was when the meter was changed, they cracked the connection downstream of the meter. So I was on the hook for that, and I had to dig it up and fix it. When you have out in the country, and you got a lot of irrigation lines, there's a lot of breakage. And I think that needs to be taken into account, that, the irrigation factor. The other thing that concerns me is that probably the biggest single water waste we have right now are leaks in apartments. Because there was a seminar at our local university here on water a couple of years ago, and they mentioned that leaks were typically 12 to 17% of use. And at the time, a couple of years before that, was the drought, and they started clamping down on irrigation and everything. And the leaks dropped in single-family dwellings down to 1 to 3%, because people could see it, and they do see it when the water bill gets way up. But the apartments were the same because didn't have individual meters back then. And I'm wondering if we are requiring apartments to start putting in individual meters, because if you got 10, 20, or 40 people on one meter, it's pretty difficult to track down who's leaking and to fix them. And that is considered the purest water waste you can have. So, and I noticed on the San Marcos, they had to buy a transmitter along with the valve. Now, are we starting to require sub-metering, and who pays for the meters?
Okay, so you know, we addressed it.
Well, I think the law now is new apartments have to be sub-metered.
Right, it's not a district meter. The
No.
developer is required to install sub-metering.
That's
and
right.
the property manager needs to send notice to the tenant of their consumption. I don't believe they have to bill the tenant, but they have to be given notice of their consumption pattern.
Mhm.
I believe the property manager can still just include water in the rent if they
Right.
choose to, or they can choose to send them a separate billing for that, but they are requiring that the meters be in there. I don't believe there's any requirement for the property manager to give the district access to the data. So it would be hard for the for the district to help in that area, to determine who's wasting water.
Interestingly enough, at our last conference, there was a seminar on leakage. And I guess the state is, in 2020, I think, is gonna mandate to the districts their leakage rate.
Right.
And although I think ours is pretty minimal, 4 to 6%.
Yeah, it depends how you count it. There's all sorts of different
Okay.
factors that are in there,
Yeah.
real water loss, apparent
Right.
water loss, and all
Mhm.
that, but,
Yeah, so,
and I think that's Senate Bill 555.
yeah, there you go,
Yeah.
555,
Right.
yes. And so, you know, I think we're in pretty good shape regarding that, but, you know, individual units, individual apartments, that, I don't know how we're gonna be able to address that, if we need to address it at all.
Well, it would be, I mean, retrofitting is beyond expensive.
No, I don't think any
Really
developers
couldn't
can
do it.
do that.
But, do we also, with, apartment units, if they suddenly, do we also notify them if they have a massive unit, a raise increases, as is we would a commercial?
Yeah,
Or
I
is
don't
it-
know.
or is it
we
per
can-
Actually, we do.
We do?
We
Yeah,
do.
we do it on all meter sizes.
Okay,
At a-
on all
They're different
meters.
parameters.
Okay.
So on a larger meter, 2-inch meter, it wouldn't be, you know, on a single-family residence, it might be 10 to 15, so we might look at that 5 difference. On a larger meter, 2-inch, we're not looking for 5, we're looking for a proportionate amount, which
Exactly.
would flow through that.
But we're
So-
still looking, so
Absolutely.
if an apartment building on one meter with, as far as we're concerned, had a increase, we would be notifying them. Now, whether they do anything about it,
Right,
we can't, and how they do that, at this point, we can't. But the newer apartments that will be built will have some way for the owner
Right,
to
Right.
know that someone's using more.
Yes.
And then
I
take
I
care of
would,
that.
intuitively, I would believe somebody, the manager would be looking at that, and
You would
particularly if
think.
they're paying the bill.
Right.
All of a sudden, apartment 103 is using 3 times as much water, something's going on, we better check this out.
Right.
So,
And in some ways, I think that that's really the correct way it should be done, because I don't know that, I mean, they're the ones paying the bill.
Yeah.
If I'm paying the bill and I had rumors in my, borders, I'd wanna know who is using the water myself. I wouldn't want my water district to come in and pick on each one
Right.
individually.
yeah,
but
no, that's
just as
not
long
our
as we
job.
can track it, so I'm glad to hear that, sub-metering. And you do monitor with kind of the same percentage of usage?
Yeah, and we're developing that and tweaking it a little bit to make it more refined, but yes.
Okay, well, at some point, it would be nice if that kind of procedure was given to the board,
Yep.
as far as how we track percentage-wise on all of them. So I think though, I like the 1-year limit on this, and I do think that video will help, and I think we need to express, what do you call your policy right now, where you, if they go into the 3rd tier, you drop them to the 2nd?
It's just called a water leak bill adjustment, that's
A
kind
water
of-
leak bill adjustment, but doesn't have any specific, does it say specifically that your 3rd will drop to 2nd for,
No, like I say, there's, I don't believe there's any written
but that's what we
policy,
would like
that's
to.
our practice, and that's exactly what I'm
I
talking about.
would like to see us say 3rd to 2nd, because I don't feel we should let them have had water.
Yeah, and
Right.
we've never
No
waived,
expense.
yeah, exactly, we've never waived
Yeah.
the requirement for them to pay for all the water that they use, it's just how much do they pay for
Mhm.
each unit of water is what we're getting into.
well, the items that I have here that we've talked about is, once a year,
Mm-hmm.
a required audit take place at our expense, the district's expense, less than $1,000 a year for the whole thing. Maximum of 3 months, going back 3 months. And the, price would be adjusted so that the water, extra water would move from a tier 3 to a tier 2.
What about a maximum amount? So if it's a commercial user and he can demonstrate he has a
Yeah.
break and it's a $10,000 adjustment he wants, would the committee recommend a maximum amount per account? Because, while you're thinking about that, this is a zero-sum game. If we're
Yeah,
not
right.
collecting the money from the people who had the leaks, it's
Everybody-
getting passed along to everybody else.
Right.
So,
Well, the question there is, so the maximum amount, I don't know how you would identify that unless you put a percentage on.
Yes, exactly
The-
what I'm thinking of.
Okay,
no more than the average of your 1 month average bill. Something
Yeah,
tied to
yeah, some-
something identifiable. But otherwise, it's a flat dollar amount. Well, right now there's no limit.
right.
It's up to our discretion. Me as the GM, I get to decide when it's reasonable, when it's not.
So walk me through how that would work.
Yeah,
If, in the 2 cases, the big commercial too, I mean, a $10,000 extra would probably be on a larger monthly
Yeah,
bill.
So with the experience that I've had since I've been here, most of the adjustments are in the range of $100 to $200.
Right.
For like a 1 month adjustment. That's a
Right.
pretty
Mhm.
big leak to
Yeah.
get it to.
Mhm.
And most people's bill is about $100 or $200. So that's what I'm saying, maybe we can say the maximum you're eligible for is your average 1 month water bill over the preceding 12 months. So if
Mhm.
people averaged $150 water bill, the most adjustment they can get is $150.
Mhm.
and
That's
how
just
will
a
that
thought.
work with the new individual that
That's-
has
well,
1 month?
That's a little tougher, but brand new properties, it's highly unlikely that they'll have a leak.
Yeah.
And if it's a new customer but on an old account, we could still use the old account data. So I may have just bought this house this year, but there may be 20 years of history at that meter. So I can still say, hey, the usage at that property has averaged $100 per month. And just because there's a new owner, it doesn't matter that he's new, that's what the property has been consumed.
And in my case, my average bill is about 150, and I had an adjustment of 120.
Yeah,
So that's less than a month.
let's not try to figure it out today. What I guess
Oh.
I'd like out of this is give me kind of the direction. I know committees aren't supposed to give direction, but what I want to do is we'll go back, we'll develop a draft policy and we'll bring it back to you as the
Okay,
committee
perfect.
on its way to the board.
All right, that's
Cause you guys
great.
can't adopt the policy, it has to
Right,
go to
right.
the board.
I think that's
Right.
good.
And we'll play with the numbers and we'll come up with some recommendations for the
That would be
committee's
excellent.
consideration.
Perfect.
Something that makes sense, that caps the district's exposure, but is still a meaningful, you know,
Help.
yeah,
And-
it's helpful.
And I do think you need to take consideration between the commercial, agricultural or normal residential, cause
Right.
that, we're talking different
Yeah.
amounts.
And I guess one last thing, is the board interested in a total amount, aggregate amount over the whole year? So we may limit each one's individually, but what if 1,000 people come in for it? This was like, holy crap, we weren't expecting 1,000 bill adjustments, but they all qualified under this policy. Is there a certain amount of money the district is comfortable that in aggregate, once we exceed that, program's closed?
See, that's, you know, if we only have a dozen, I mean, I don't know that people are gonna go, oh my gosh, look at this, the ordinance has changed, I'm gonna
Right.
come in.
Yeah.
I can't imagine we'd have that many people, that's why I thought, you know, if
Yeah.
we've got a dozen and 60, you know, that's less than
I
$1,000.
think at this point we should, well, I think if something unusual, totally out of the norm comes, we need to address it separately anyway.
Okay.
We will, but from what you were saying, about a dozen a year, granted, we haven't had the $10,000 a month.
But
Oh, a month, okay.
We have a dozen a month,
I thought you
of,
said,
of leaks,
people that call in? Oh, that,
I would think so, yeah.
a dozen
Yeah.
a month?
I
I thought you meant annually.
That's what I thought too,
Yeah,
so.
I thought it was on the couple dozen total, but Mike would know
No.
better than I do.
No,
so-
there's,
Would you find the total for?
well, I can
come
find
back.
that for you, yeah.
And
So-
then based on that, we can determine if we need to do something like that. And are we saying that
Yeah, so
out of
that's-
the dozen that come in, most of the time we've adjusted them already?
Yeah, well, some of them we don't, because people come in and say, and the example I gave
wouldn't
before is
qualify.
real. Yeah, they say, my power went out in my meter, or my irrigation controller, and we said, that's not what the program is for.
I guess what I'm asking is, how many do we get that would qualify?
Qualifying
And how much
adjustments.
we've paid out over a few years' time, so we have an estimate of where we're going.
And that doesn't might include what just General Manager Brum just said about someone would call in, they count as one, but they weren't eligible because they're landscape timer.
Yeah.
So that might be the dozen amount, how many we actually adjust, I will get. for you.
Okay,
That's the
yeah,
real-
'cause
that's really the
Where I was
issue.
worried about was the audit. When it cost $60, that's why I said a dozen, that's, you know, nothing. 144, that's
A lot more money.
$8,600
Yeah.
a year, and I don't think I wanna spend that much money
Right.
on a required audit. So work the numbers.
We will. Our, I'll call it, criteria for demonstrating that you've had your leak repaired, 'cause remember, that's required.
Right.
You have to show you fixed
Yes,
the problem.
yes.
We're not gonna keep doing this.
No,
But it's pretty loose, so somebody can just say, hey, here's my receipts from Home Depot. I don't know if they actually fixed their problem or not. They may have gone and bought a bunch of pipe and a bunch of pipe supplies and then returned them the next day and not done anything. I don't know why they would do that.
well,
But
yeah,
what's the threshold for demonstrating that the repair has been made? Oftentimes, and we just dealt with a lady about 3 or 4 weeks ago, they'll bring in a bill or an invoice from a landscaper or
Leak
some kind of
detection
contractor
service
or
or
leak
something,
detection
yeah.
service that says, we identified it, we repaired it. High degree of confidence in those cases.
Oh, yeah.
And when a guy says, here's my Home Depot
and that was
receipt.
what I did, cause I repaired it myself. I
Yeah.
had my labor repaired it. I got the equipment, I had a bill for the cash that I spent. But if next month, if my bill is still at 39 units, too bad, Jim, you eat it.
You fixed, you
That's what I
you didn't
believe.
really fix it, right.
Yeah,
So
you
that
didn't
policy
fix it.
could address
Yeah, we
those
gotta
types of
adjust
things.
it.
Yes, I
address
was
that.
gonna say, we wouldn't, reimburse them the money or however we do it, credit it to their account. Certainly until we've got this qualified, and I think they might have to wait a month. I'd like to see if their thing really does go down or not.
Yeah.
If it doesn't go down, I'd question them on it before
Yeah.
we give them a check. I mean,
Okay,
I think
so
you need to have a,
Yeah, there
Delay
you
the
go.
billing adjustment until time.
delay the adjustment
Yeah, there you go.
until,
Yeah, because if this month I get a 39 unit bill, whatever I didn't do it. So I got
Right.
and you have to make sure it's 1 or 2 billings because you don't know if the fix happened in or between.
right.
at what, in the
Yeah.
billing cycle, but
I like that approach. The downside is some people find it's a hardship. People are saying, I can't afford this water bill, I need immediate relief. So if we say, hey, you gotta wait 2 or 3 months for us to show if it actually did what you wanted it to do, that puts them, out of pocket for that period of time. That's okay, it's their water usage, it's their responsibility.
Right, but we also have the policy where we will work with a
Right.
ratepayer.
Yeah.
Well, okay, if this is a hardship,
It
we
falls
can-
into a different policy.
Yeah, it goes into the
Well,
other
I mean-
policy,
Right.
and we can adjust that.
the hardship is the fact that they owe us the money.
Right,
Yeah.
And the hardship, if they have to wait, is that they still have the other hardship and they have to pay that.
yeah,
And then if we give them the money back, we're not gonna get to say, okay, you don't pay it, so I'm saying they're really separate to
yeah,
me.
yeah,
One is you wait longer to get it back, and the other is we'll work with you on a hardship basis.
Yeah.
okay,
I was just gonna say, that's why typically our unwritten policy now is we'd only do 1 month of adjustment though too. Is part of it was because if someone's delaying and they're just lazy about fixing a leak, we're not gonna give you 6 months, 8 months, 10 months worth of credit.
yeah,
Once it's identified, that's when the time stops.
1 month.
That's
Oh.
why it was 1 month. And what we do now is, let's say you had a leak for 2 months, is we'll look at your bill and we'll see which is most advantageous to you. So if May, it was 10 units, and we'd give you credit for 10, but in June it was 22 units, we'll give you credit for the higher of the amounts. And that's how it is now. It's not saying that's how it should be, but that kind of limits
Well,
the
I think
district's
that's
liability.
to their favor, and I like the 1 month. You're right, there's all kinds of reasons people could stall, including not having any money,
right.
and so, I'll just go until you shut my water off.
Virtually everything we do, we err on the side of helping the customer.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll give them, we won't forgive things, but we'll charge them a lower tier rate, we'll give them payment plans, we'll do everything we can to work with them.
Okay.
Chris, Mike, anything else on that? All right,
Nope.
I think this is good, so probably give us a couple of months with
Yeah.
the holidays and everything, we'll come forward with a policy for the committee's consideration, and then whatever tweaks you want on that, then we'll schedule it for the board.
So my leak was about 2.5 years ago, so if we could do retro. Just,
But that's, your joke, but the people will come in and they'll do that, they'll say, hey, I was just doing a bill surveillance and I realized a year ago I had a leak. And they may say, can I get some credit? How long can it be since the leak started? I don't know. That's something the policy should at least address.
Yeah, I think you probably put a note
Fairly
in there
current.
about that.
Yeah, but I think limiting the number of months that you get credit for
Yeah.
helps with that. So even if it started a year and a half ago and you haven't fixed it, you're only gonna get 1 or 2 month credit.
Yeah.
And like Mike said, maybe it's the biggest month, maybe it's not, but it'll limit the exposure.
yeah,
All right, well, thank you.
all right. So item 2, the agricultural water rates program.
All right, I'm gonna let Chris take the lead on this.
Okay. Just as background, we had that gentleman show up to the May 16th board meeting, Robert
I can
Case.
remember
Yeah.
him.
He bought this ag property back up in the hills up in the Twin Oaks area and wanted agricultural water. It came back to this committee on August 21st. And as you'll recall, agricultural water is supposed to be used for growing crops, animal husbandry, floriculture, that type of thing. Back at the initial board meeting, what was pointed out was that our existing ordinance on rates is silent on the subject of customers having access to the certified non-participating agricultural water rate. That's a mouthful. Back at the PAP committee meeting, some of the items that were brought forward and included in your packet is some of these documents if you want to refer to them, was how that rate system came about. How ag water had been grandfathered, so it was set up so that you couldn't get it anymore. That was kind of what was in the ordinances, was if you were in the program, you could stay in the program, but there were no new additions to the program. It was kind of locked out. I included copies of the existing ordinances, the old ones like 165, but then the new one, 207, that doesn't have the language in it. Talk to you about some of the customers that were interested in the program, and then kind of gave a brief information on what the revenue loss was from The certified non-participating is it just flatlines at tier 2. So basically what we would lose is for every customer that would be in tier 3, we would lose $4.04. But what the committee really wanted to know was, okay, I know it's $4.04, but what does that translate to with actual customers? And the other thing that the board or the committee was interested in was there any reason why this got left out? And unfortunately, research doesn't find out why this got left out. There's not any logical reason why the new ordinance is silent. It just is the way it is, and I can't explain it. It's just the way it came out. The other thing I wanted to point out was, since that last PAP committee meeting, 4 more customers have asked for ag water, so they're kind of waiting for an answer on this. I did talk to Kelly Salt, who's one of the attorneys over at BB&K, and her comments was, it's not clear to me as your counsel how you could restrict access to the certified non-participating agricultural water rate. You don't have anything that says that people couldn't get it. She recommended that be changed in future ordinances. That was kind of her recommendation. She also recommended that there be a lower level of service for the agricultural water rate. As you'll recall, for the Water Authority's ag rate that
The
we have,
TSAR.
the TSAR, in times of drought, when there's a cutback from Metropolitan that says you must reduce 30% as a district, the customer in turn must reduce 30%. So that's the lower level of service that the TSAR customer gets, but there's really kind of no lower level of service for the certified non-participating agricultural water rate.
Yeah, that creates a Proposition 218 issue. If
Issue.
you're
Yeah.
charging them less, but they're getting the same level of service as everybody else.
Yeah.
But does it move it out of the 218 if we charge them less and they accept the reduction?
Yeah, so even if you don't ever pull that trigger and give
Yeah.
them reduced service, you have it set up that they are a tier 2, well, I'll say a tier B customer,
Yeah.
that you don't have the
Yeah.
same rights to the water as
Right.
everybody else.
Yeah.
You will be the first to feel the effects.
Yeah,
Okay.
Some people will jump into that program and then they'll wanna jump out as soon as you have to actually implement
yeah.
the cutbacks. So whatever
That-
policy, you have to figure that out.
That
too.
was kind of one of those points, was that's the trade-off.
Yeah.
And
If you're in it, you're in it.
Yeah, and if you get out of it,
You're
you're
out.
out of it.
Right.
You
Yeah.
can't keep hopping
In
back
and out
and
whenever
forth.
it suits your purpose.
Yeah, I
Right.
get that. That makes sense.
That does make sense. So right now, if we have a customer who's a TSAR person, what would they be, how would their bill be for us? What would they be paying us?
Well, they would, like, Chris, I don't know if the TSAR follows the exact, or certified non-participating.
No, it's a better rate than that. So it's a reduced rate.
It's a
and-
reduced rate, but I couldn't in the top of my head remember what it was. I'm just wondering if you look.
They pay, the TSAR customers pay the tier 2 rate,
Tier 2.
and they get a 94 cents less than the tier 2 rate. Because
Minus,
94 cents
Yeah.
right
Minus
now, and it'll be
94
like 87 cents come January. So
okay,
that
minus
90
87 cents. And then they have to do what when the drought happens?
They have to reduce by that exact percentage of their consumption. So if there's a 20% reduction from Metropolitan, they would have to reduce their consumption 20%. So it's painful. And that's sort of how we wound up with this
Yeah.
other ag rate program, was there were certain customers who were like, look, I just need the water. I can't cut back my avocado growth 30%, it'll kill it. And that's how we wound up getting this other rate, was they pay higher than the TSAR rate, but they get whatever water they need, they get. So it's reduced, but it's
I
not.
can see why there's a 218 with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It seems to me, if there's someone who has an avocado grove and they are going with the TSAR program, then anyone else with avocados could do the same. I don't know why we would say to some other customer, well, this man's choosing to pay the low rate and we're gonna not limit you.
That's
yeah, but,
Kelly's
yeah,
concern.
but with the TSAR program, they get a lower rate than, they get the 94 cents or whatever.
Reduction.
But the non-compliance people, they just get the 2-tier rate.
Tier 2, yeah.
And they still have the effect. It's interesting because the same fella that we were talking about earlier,
Robert Case.
no, Holy Guacamole, George
Oh.
Bamber, he finally turned his grove off. He said, Jack, I cannot pay these rates.
So,
Oh,
And with
yes.
the reduction that we were forced into a couple of years back, he said, I can't grow, so I'm just cutting it off. So he cut the grove off.
Yeah.
I don't think I told him all kinds of different possibilities. He said, no. I need the water. If I can't get the water, I'll just turn the grove off. So
And he was a TSAR,
I think he was. Yeah.
he
He
was.
said, I got the lower rate, but now they want me to reduce 30%. I can't lose 30%. I'm barely making it, you know,
Yeah.
and
Right.
avocados in our area are not
Tough
as
business.
we
tough as
we don't have an
good as-
irrigation rate, do we?
No,
So that's an issue. A lot of agencies have an irrigation rate, which is for maybe golf courses
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Large
commercial
landscape,
agriculture. type thing.
separate
We don't
meter.
have that rate, so if you're a HOA common area like the Emerald Heights folks,
Yeah, right.
you just are treated, you know, you can, depending on the size of your meter and type of class of service, you just get treated like every other customer in that field. So
Mhm.
in conjunction with whatever we do with this, I would suggest that when we do our next cost of service study, we consider the development of an irrigation rate
Yeah,
compliant with 218 that would address some of these larger water users.
yeah. Okay, I think that's something to put on the book.
So,
yeah, so, go ahead.
one of the things the committee really wanted to know was, you know, what was the revenue loss, and that's part of the reason I asked Mike to come to this meeting, was we looked at the Hocto property, which was that mushroom farm we saw the
Yep.
video last time. And so they really have 4 meters there. One of them is fire service, another one is like the irrigation on the property, but then they have 2 commercial meters that are really there to provide the source of water for the
Mhm.
mushrooms themselves. So there's 2 2-inch meters there, and included in your attachments is a 1A and a 1B sheets, and it shows the revenue loss, and for just the last year, it would be a reduction in revenue to the district if we were to give them this agricultural water rate of almost $82,000. So it's significant. It's not an insignificant amount. The points I would say is that it is a legitimate agricultural account
Yep.
in, you know, in how you define what an agricultural account is, and then the production that it has and so forth.
The question is, if he were involved in this when we had our reduction, fortunately, it was only 16% ultimately, it got 32 to 16. I think that was the right number. So, I don't know if there was any question to him, would he have been able to reduce his consumption by that percentage?
Well, and he would not have been in the TSAWR account because that one's grandfathered. He can't
Right.
get into that one. But currently, there's nothing within our ordinance that says that he couldn't have the certified non-participating agricultural water rate, which is what they're asking for.
Yeah, but that does not come with any kind of a reduction, should we have a,
Correct.
Right.
right,
Correct.
so we want to resolve that.
And Chris, just to clarify, the $82,000
Yeah.
was based on the certified non-participating, not
Correct.
the TSAR.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So-
Okay.
And so there's 2 sheets, 1A and 1B. They've got 2 different
Yep,
Needed.
Okay.
2-inch commercial
So
meters.
you're saying that had he not paid what he is paying now, which is not TSAR,
Right.
um,
He's
He
paying a
was-
commercial rate, so he's getting into that tier 3, and Mike,
a commercial rate, he's paying us the commercial rates, I'm just gonna look on attachment 1A.
yeah,
You're saying he paid 118,000, round,
For the year.
about,
Right.
For the year.
yeah,
And if he'd been on the, AWR, I'm gonna call it, he would have only paid 72, or around 71.
correct.
So we would have lost the 48. And if we had done that with him in the first tier, if we had a 10% reduction, he had to do it, or a 25% reduction mandate. As a commercial person, does he do that, or is it for only residential?
If he was in TSAR, he would have to do that,
No,
but
he's
he's
not in
not in
TSAR.
TSAR.
What I'm saying is, as just a commercial account,
Yeah,
2 years ago, when the governor told us we were gonna reduce 25%, did he have to reduce 25% or not as commercial?
Only the district as a whole had to
Right.
reduce 25%, and so we never pointed fingers at anybody and said, you have to
Okay.
reduce 25%.
He
We
was,
just needed.
as a commercial person, he was responsible for some reduction.
Not specifically, it was really district-wide, and as long as we were limboed under that bar district-wide, we didn't point anybody out and say,
Right.
you've got to,
Dude,
you've got to
we
get
asked
underneath.
everybody to reduce.
Everybody to
Exactly,
reduce.
we didn't force anybody, and I went to
Right.
the breweries, I don't know.
I guess then my question is, do we know if he reduced? That would be an interesting thing to me.
I don't think, none of the commercial businesses that I'm aware of that used water as a byproduct, the breweries or anything, really made any effort to not produce what they were producing. They may have wanted to be more efficient, but as far as cutting back their production, neither the breweries nor do I believe Hocto Kanoko made any effort to.
But you think they may have been
Reduce
more
production.
efficient? I'm not asking to reduce their production, I'm asking if they became more efficient,
I don't-
which is what most of us were supposed to do. We were supposed
Correct.
to still keep our yard in a more efficient manner.
Correct. And so I could probably caveat that and say, there was only so many days that everybody was supposed to irrigate. Remember how we had it like that? And so they probably complied with that.
Okay.
But not on the other 2 meters.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
So,
so if
let-
we put them on our own type of TSAR, we can't put them in the TSAR, but in our program, instead of just putting them into a full 2%, is it viable to say if there is a reduction, they have to take on half of it or something? If he says, I can't, I feel like there's gotta be something there that for 218, or you're gonna have a challenge if you think about it that way.
well, personally, I think going to the, our own agricultural rate is acceptable. But it comes with, if there's a reduction,
There's a
you
reduction.
have to take the reduction, and where you have to, if Metropolitan says you gotta do a 20% reduction, you have to do a 20% reduction. And you know that going in. If that doesn't work for you, stay on the regular rate.
Yeah, and then
Yeah, I
coupled
agree.
with that, there has to be the stick, and if you don't reduce as much, what happens? Do we kick you out of the program? Do we penalize
Absolutely.
you in some way?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You're
That's-
either in or you're out.
Yeah, you got
I mean,
benefit all these months. If after the first month we don't see the reduction,
The
Yeah.
rates change.
the rate goes
Yeah.
up. Now, having said that out loud,
We have to work out how it works.
well,
Yeah.
maybe
Devil's always in the
maybe
details.
that might be a little too quick in the statement, but certainly
Mm-hmm.
after a second month, if we don't see the reduction, then for sure they have to go up. My fear is always that by the time you get your bill, you're already a month behind.
Right.
Right.
So,
right.
maybe you need a second month to make sure that you're in fact making the reduction.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm also concerned, I don't want it to be like obviously we have this gentleman with his grove, and he said I couldn't do the TSR, I was on TSR, we thought. He said I had to let my thing go at the 30% or the 26 or the 17 or whatever it was. So my thought was that maybe there's a way that they can be agriculture, because I wanna promote, or their businesses, I don't want, but if they could learn to be more efficient, that would be great. And I'm just saying if there was a reduction, part of our program is that they don't they have to do 50% of what's demanded by net.
well, and Director
This-
Evans, I've learned through being here with the ag programs is that the avocados is a tough business, and there's people that can do it, and you gotta be on it, and you can do it. It's a tough business in our service area, but there's also other things that can be grown, and
Oh,
it's,
right.
that's people have switched.
Yeah,
People have made change
and I
to
tried to get him to
vineyards.
do it. My
Yeah.
friend, I said, hey, cut these down, put in grapes.
Yeah.
You use less water, and it's going to be a couple, 3 or 4 years before you can get a harvest, but there'll be money there. No, I mean,
I think that's
they're-
part of the challenge with the ones that've been around a long time.
It's
really-
legacy,
Right,
they're
it's
just-
Isn't that what they-
legacy,
yeah,
they're-
and it's retrofit.
Yeah.
Why would you want to say, I'll give up my money for a couple of years, or I spend all I have to do to go for the new
Right,
technically
and they were-
efficient?
they were-
It's very expensive.
They were a legacy grove, and they weren't gonna change, the kids are not interested in
Mhm.
continuing, so to do
Got
all
that
that
right.
group was just cut it off, done with it.
Mike, did you want to add something about the drought rates?
Oh, I was just saying then one of the things that we had before was drought rates. So that at the time, if you were in that, like this customer,
The
and you were getting the tier
commercial?
2 rate and you didn't cut back, or even if you did cut back, you'd be you'd go back up to the tier or some kind of drought rate where it would be like right now tier 2 is at $4.43.
Uh-huh.
We'd create a drop rate that's $6. I'm just throwing out a number.
Okay,
So that when the governor or when someone said, hey, 20%, then now all of a sudden the drop rates kicked in. And that's your level of
that's the
service
level.
difference, is that now you're paying more
for more
for
water.
that,
And that's a pretty common thing in rate setting, is that you'll have these different columns that show during a 10% cutback, here's a different set of rates. So right now, we only have one set of rates, this is rates year
Yeah.
round. But we could also have different columns that show for a 10, 20, 30, 40% cutback.
So instead of doing
here's
the
rates.
reduction, you just pay the higher
You
rate.
pay the higher
Yeah.
rate,
Yeah, well,
So
I-
you
Well,
gotta
I
have the
can agree
water
with
bill.
that.
Yeah,
but
me
it's
too, I
gonna
think
hurt. Yeah.
that makes
Yeah.
sense, because as I say, some of your agriculture, you just can't turn the water off by 30%. You're in a growing season, and turn the water off 30%, you don't get the harvest.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
And that
That
may,
would be called
that
drought rates?
approach may satisfy like Best and Krieger, is you can't pay the same for a different level of service, but if you're paying a different price, then maybe you can get the same level of
Mhm.
reliability.
Okay.
Directors, I had one more account I wanted you to look at. It's attachment 2 in your packet. The name on it's Michael Rote. I chose this one. There were a few customers that were asking for the ag rate before they really had any ag in. They were saying, hey, look, I want to put this in. Would I be able to get it? And I'm shrugging at them going, I don't know
I
what
don't
to
know,
tell you.
yeah.
Oh,
So to look at their usage pattern for the past year kind of makes no sense.
Right.
So this customer actually does have, he's got ag on this property. He has multiple accounts with us,
Mhm.
but this is his kind of residential account that also has ag on it. And so that's why I pulled this one up. And Mike again worked the spreadsheet for us. And as you can see, this one doesn't have the same financial magnitude as the other one, where the
Right.
financial hit to the district is almost $1,300.
And
So
do we know what kind of agricultural product?
I think
is?
he's palm trees. I think.
Palm trees.
Yeah.
But it's over an acre, commercially grown for commercial property, or
Right, and
Yeah.
the acre is the beginning.
right.
You gotta have at least an acre
Yeah.
of doing
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Although I sort of think if we do that type of, if when it comes time to put that language in our next ordinance, I think maybe we should think about that, in that there's some hydroponics. I think I talked to you about that. There's a hydroponics place
mhm.
up along Twin Oaks, kind of near Olive and Twin Oaks.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about?
Mhm.
And I'm not sure it's an acre, but I think they have vertically stacked hydroponics.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so
yeah,
if you
yeah.
were to
Oh, yeah.
measure it out that way, I think it would
Mm-hmm.
be over an acre. I don't really know.
But
You
we
know,
can
how do you
develop
measure
We can
vertical?
develop an equivalency. that
Yeah,
this
yeah,
hydroponic
yeah.
is equivalent
There you
to
go.
No,
five
it's
acre.
equivalent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just,
I think-
and part of my reason of bringing that one up is I know that property's been
Yeah.
sitting there vacant for forever, and part of
Mhm.
the reason is it's a commercial meter on there, so it
Mhm.
gets into that tier 3 again,
Yep,
where
yep.
you
Oh.
can't.
Mm-hmm.
Companies have been there and they've all
yeah, they've always
failed
been
because they
agricultural there
can't
for a long time.
get it to work because of just the third tier.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Just wrecks them. So
Okay, well,
I know where you're talking about.
so and then finally the last point was, turns out there's only 22 of these types of accounts, which really isn't that many.
no.
Our certified non-participating agricultural water rate is only 22.
What is AO and CO?
So AO is ag opt-out, and CO is also ag opt-out, but when it has the C in front of it, it means it's also a residential property.
Mhm.
So it's combined ag
So
residential.
combined, that's the
Yeah,
C is.
yeah.
Okay.
There's other attachments which are just previous reports.
So the recommendation's pretty broad, provide staff direction as appropriate when you look at things like this, but, so for example, we could come back with a new ordinance, right?
Yeah,
And the one option is that we try to tighten up the ordinance a little bit to be clear,
Yeah,
what are the benefits and downside of being in or out? What does it take to get in there?
Would we let new customers in?
Yeah, is it closed?
yeah, I personally, again, much like the last one, we'll let you guys chew on it, bring it back, I think it's appropriate to bring it back, but I would encourage agricultural, so I'd like to see that take place, letting new people come in, particularly with, not new, but the, what do they call it? Not only organic, but tiny,
Micro.
micro.
Yeah.
Micro.
Microgreens.
Yeah, micro,
Microgreen.
you know, I've got 3/4 of an acre of property, half of which is nothing on it. You grow little mushrooms or little somethings, get on the rate.
Yeah.
And it might be viable, not that I'm ready to go out and do that, but nonetheless, somebody might be able to. So, the equivalency, I think, is a good idea. And then, again, maybe an acre is too large, even the equivalent, you know, if it's horizontal. But if you got half an acre and you wanna put it into micro garden for commercial, maybe if you are a commercial grower of some sorts, I don't know if that's too broad of a opening for people.
I think the critical thing on all of these is if when we call you a commercial grower, we need to define what we qualify as a commercial grower.
Yeah.
Right.
And if it's an equivalency of anything, whatever the amount, we need to be sure that we can justify and verify it, because these are very big. But before we go a little further, I would like to give Mike a chance to speak.
Oh, yeah,
He had a-
ultimately, for sure.
Well, I'm a little worried about some particular types of businesses may not be able to adapt to more efficient use. And I'm thinking of the small beer brewers. Because they usually end up using water softeners to get the salts out and give a little smoother use. Now, if you got a big producer like Stone Brewery, they consume 4 gallons of water for every gallon of product. But a microbrewery, they may be doing 7 gallons. And that's because Stone Brewery can afford the real high extra capital it takes to be more water efficient.
Mhm.
Maybe there's some businesses that don't belong in a desert. That's for one thing. The other thing that I'm a little hesitant about is that we don't want to have totally unfeathered consumption of water allowed by any segment, because we're looking at a very bad situation coming up January 1st, 2020, with the Lake Mead essentially being in the plan to be completely dried up at some point. So something should be said about water softeners, and something should be said about more and more tiers would help some, but some ag is very marginal. Some ag is extremely profitable but wasteful of water.
Well, that's very true, and those are good valid points. I'm gonna say that that's gonna be the responsibility of the person who's going into business to decide if they're gonna do a marginal or a profitable one, and we need to make sure the water's fairly distributed, right? So I feel like the tier idea is critical, that this is not just two tier for eternity and regardless. I think we do need to have some sort of, and I don't care what the words are, drought rate or efficiency rate or whatever. I do think we need to do that. I'd like to possibly, if there's a way, just to remove the certified non-participating name out of this and give ourselves a name, like this is our
Valesinos
ag /
You don't like the
commercial.
certified non-participating? 'Cause there's
It's a
roles right up.
lovely, I love
Yeah.
it, it's a great name, I love being certified non-participating, but
Yeah.
I would just like to remove it, so it's not even something to confuse us with and sort of, direct us in starting over with a new product. And what we're trying to address is just, not just the big, but the smaller. We're trying to offer them a rate that's a little bit beneath, but that to maintain it beneath the cost of the normal person, they do have some sacrifices when we get into water efficiency and lack of water.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how much technology and efficiency we do, if nature decides not to drop water on us for 10 years, it won't make one bit of difference. So they have
Right.
to be around with that. I do understand the difference between when you're saying a half an acre might produce a lot and another acre might not produce a lot, or as Mike has pointed out, one business has better opportunities. But that, to me, is the responsibility of a businessman or woman making their decisions on what they're doing. I just want us to make sure we're accommodating agriculture, and that also includes commercial, because we are talking about the breweries and stuff. And how can we accommodate them, because this is a business, but, and this is important to our world, but how do we do it in a way that they, feel the crunch if the water's not here?
Right.
Well, so that brewery thing's a little bit different, because this does not, a brewery would not be eligible for
For
the
the, an
certified
ag rate,
there
no,
you
no,
go.
no, I
Great,
understand that.
Great,
Right.
then we don't need to worry about that.
And, no, that's
And we
totally
can't grow
commercial and-
marijuana in San Diego, so we don't need to worry
We
about
don't have
that.
to worry about that.
So, not yet.
Yeah, we do,
Well,
Well,
we do
can't,
all
though.
kinds of things that we're not supposed to
Ultimately,
do,
maybe
but,
we will.
legally.
but,
Legally, the illegal people, they're gonna serve their time, pay their rate.
So I'm hearing that the board's not, or the committee's not interested in saying program's locked, nobody else is eligible.
No,
You still want to be open to that,
I
but we
do.
want to define the, maybe better define the program
Mhm.
and the requirements of being in.
now, the
Yeah.
TSAR might always be available, it needs to come up for renewal, I believe, again.
But I think that one's locked, right?
You can't get into that now,
Yeah.
That's-
so it's
that's-
just well, let me caveat that, because the answer I got from the water authority is if somebody was in it back before 2009, decided to drop out of it,
Wanted to come
they can
back.
still get back in it.
But it's a limited candidate. pool.
Correct.
It's
It's
not open to
limited.
anybody.
Correct. Absolutely
So my
correct.
question on that is there any reason in deciding this thing financially and equitably, is there any reason that Valesitas itself, just Valesitas, would be willing to open up TSAR, but it'd have to be a different name, obviously.
Right.
A TSAR program for anyone in ag who knows you'll get this rate, you'll get the -84, but you'll get hit, can we do that?
Can I explain real quick what the TSAR is and why it's the -84? It's
Uh-huh.
because we get a credit from the water authority on our bill. It's not,
Oh,
we're given 87 cents.
of course
so,
we are, you're right,
So we're getting a direct credit.
no.
So we're
Passing
not,
that along
we're passing
to-
that along, so it's just a pass through from the water authority. So,
Yeah, I'm not
No.
personally interested in lowering the rate to lower the
No,
rate.
no, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, so I would
Give
just
them
say,
tier
I
one and
think
two.
then, yeah, I
Yeah.
think our ag, a new ag approach that we just talked about
Okay.
with the third tier, fourth tier, fifth tier, whatever it is. that
And similar
goes
to
into effect.
the first item on the agenda today, would the committee be interested in capping the district's exposure, acre feet of water, total dollars? Because these can be viewed as subsidies. It's a different level of service, but it's less revenue that we're taking in. And if you open the program to anybody that's new, and we find out there's 1,000 customers, and it's an extreme example, it won't be that much, but if they all qualify, how much do we want to put towards this program?
Well, aren't we kind of going into the thing now of telling you if you wanna put your acreage into ag, you can't because we're not gonna support you? That, I don't see that sounds like it's not in our jurisdiction.
I'm just always a little nervous when we
I
develop a
do
program
understand.
that is kind of a blank check.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Cause you look at one customer here,
Yeah,
Octo Kanoko, $82,000.
yeah.
And if you get 10 of him, we're talking real
But
money.
we're not talking about this program anymore.
No, but if he were on our Belacitas agricultural program, we would lose the $80,000.
Yeah, that's the
That's
impact.
the loss.
If
Right now,
he
Right
was
now.
eligible for our CANPOR,
Yeah.
whatever you wanna call it, the
Yeah.
certified non-participating.
Yeah.
well, maybe, are you talking about a limit as a district or a limit per account?
Either way, it could be in aggregate or it could be as an individual.
I'm just assuming that this other program, we wouldn't lose the 80. He may get a different, well, we'll get less, but I'm assuming,
He would be 80. He would be 80 because he would be in the current plan, the certified non-participating. All that
Well, I
stuff.
think Director Evans is thinking it'd be a revised plan.
Oh.
It wouldn't
Yeah, right.
I'm
have
saying
the
it would be a revised
certified-
plan. I'd like to just stop with this and work out,
Rethink the whole program.
rethink it in that they don't all get it at 2%. Maybe theirs is that they get it at it's not 2%, the tier 2 up to this amount, and then you automatically go into tier 3. And the first tier 3 isn't a big jump, but it's a little bit of a jump. And then if you have to go in the tier 4 or there's a drought, it
Yeah.
changes. So maybe he doesn't really end up at tier 2.
Well, and it just kind of occurred to me, and General Manager Prim was talking about, you know, an irrigation rate. Like, so if you've just got a meter that's dedicated irrigation rate, typically with an irrigation rate, it's just it's a flat rate. It's
Right.
just
Yeah,
it's
right.
just a flat rate, and maybe that would be
That's-
the answer. Is that
Right.
we just shift these into
Yeah.
it's an irrigation rate, and it's
Instead of
flat
agricultural,
lines, and we
it
don't.
just-
But even those, we have to be careful, because we set up if we set up an irrigation rate, that's tier 3 water, we're never gonna be charging. You know, we may have an irrigation rate that's a fixed rate, and it may be at tier 2, and maybe at some different rate.
Right.
But it won't, your bigger users we're not gonna be getting tier 3 revenue from that type of a program. And that's something that would be ferreted out in the cost of service study. We'd have to
Right.
make assumptions about how many people are using,
Yeah.
how many people would qualify
Yeah,
for the
because-
irrigation program.
If that were in effect, why would Emerald Heights come to us and say, hey, we need to worry about this, because
Right.
we're spending $100,000 a year, and they wanted to reduce their
Yeah.
expenditure, and so they
Right.
came to us to figure out a way.
Right.
If we just had a flat rate,
Right.
I don't care what it is,
Which many agencies do. They have an irrigation rate. So if you have an Emerald Heights development, the homeowners have residential rates and their common areas have irrigation rates.
Right.
Not a commercial, it's an irrigation rate,
Yeah.
which tends to be a flat rate.
yeah.
But I'm thinking that might solve this, you know, it might be the same thing where it's just, you know, it's like, okay,
Yeah. If
You
you're
know, we're
agricultural,
gonna
you
change you to an
qualify for the
irrigation rate.
irrigation rate.
if you don't want the cutback from TSAR,
Yeah.
that might be a solution that could
Yeah.
pencil out. I mean, there might be some revenue
Right.
loss,
Yeah,
but
the only problem I can see in that is timing. We could do something on this whenever we wanted, but we'd have to wait till the new cost of service study to
True,
implement a
true.
irrigation rate.
true,
Yeah.
true.
But that's not that far away. We're already almost in, we're in December. We'll be coming forward in the fall for the new cost of service study.
Yeah, but it doesn't, an irrigation rate, you don't restrict it. It's just, you know, if somebody has an irrigation account, it's, you know, it's just
Right.
an irrigation account, that's what it is. They're
But
not
even
using it.
irrigation, you can say you're the first to be cut. In order for you not to be tiered, you're gonna
True.
be the first to cut.
True.
Because usually the irrigation, at least like an HOA, that's non-essential stuff.
Right.
Unless it's for fire,
Right.
health and safety, but if it's just beautiful landscaping, that should be cut before somebody has to cut on their sanitation.
I think we have two things going.
But we could maybe just
think-
get rid of this one and
Yeah.
just replace.
You're
this.
right, we have two things going, proposing that maybe there's one solution that solves both.
Right, right. But if time isn't of the essence in this, because I know fall's gonna be a cost survey study, and then that'll take a year at least, right?
Well, let me clarify that. So we're probably in the March, I'd say maybe the end of the first quarter of next calendar year, we're probably gonna be trying to get a consultant on board. And they will do our cost of service through the summer. In the fall, we'll be bringing something forward to the board to go through the Prop 218 process.
Okay,
So by latter part of fall of 2019, we're gonna be asking the board to consider new rates.
Yeah.
Those rates may include an irrigation rate.
Yeah, okay, that
But
makes sense.
the whole point is to have it done before the end of calendar year 2019, to to have our new rates in effect so that January 1 of 2020, because right now our current rates, our rates are gonna increase on January 1 because we did a two-year rate thing, so that'll take us through the end of 19. We don't have anything considered after for 2020 beyond, so that's why we'll do the next rate study next summer, spring, summer, fall. And you're right, it'll take probably 6 months from when we solicit proposals from consultants to when we do our Prop 218 hearing. That's probably a 6 to 8 month process.
Yeah, so I think we need to segregate the irrigation rate to the time we get to the study.
Right.
For the purpose of today's meeting, trying to figure this out, I think
The agricultural.
the agricultural rate, I think I've heard, whether it's an acre or half acre or the equivalency thereof, looking at that, they were gonna have the 1 and 2 tiers, and then that's the end of it. We can let anybody in that we want. The question about how many people get in and what the revenue is, I think my opinion is should be a wait and see. If all of a sudden we got a flood of these things in and we're, now we're into hundreds of thousands of dollars of loss, then perhaps we need to say, okay, we need to put a stop on this thing.
I would like to present it as a pilot program.
Okay.
I would really like to have
Oh,
it
yeah,
be a
that's a great
pilot
idea.
program. And that we're going to call it our ag rates or whatever you feel defines it. And we put the equivalency of what's in it. We give them the rate. We also do say that if there needs to further efficiency, that they'll be responsible for those 3rd, 4th, and 5th, 6th layers if we have to on the tiers. They continue to have it, but if it gets serious, they're gonna pay more. And then we're gonna do this as a pilot program, and we give ourselves a year.
Yeah, that's a good
And in
number.
the process, that will give us by the fall,
Right.
we'll have something to also take into consideration with cost of service on it. Is it gonna become, do we have an ag rate and then we have an irrigation rate?
Yep.
I know it gets complicated with more rates, but if that divides up the people and they feel like they're all being fairly treated, equitably treated, but we aren't, one size doesn't fit everybody, as we all know. I think that might be a way, and
Okay.
as a pilot program, then we have the ability to look at it and go, holy moly, we're not doing this again.
Right.
Or we might say, whoa, this works, and we might find that those people aren't interested in it.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna do it unless I get straight to it, then don't do it.
Yeah, I think that's a
So,
good idea.
Yeah, and pilot projects typically have some kind of end date and
Yeah.
horizon. We
Yeah.
say we're gonna do this for a while and then we'll reevaluate and may or may not continue
And the
it.
people who choose to try it know that they're part of a pilot program.
Right.
And hopefully they'll commit to the program, if it's a year's program, to gather information.
Right.
You can't have them jump in 1 month and go, oh, I hate this. I mean, if they want
Yeah,
out, they can
no.
always leave, but
Yeah.
hopefully we can see how that works.
Okay.
I think that 1-year time frame is a good idea, the pilot program is a
Yeah.
good idea.
Yeah, 'cause
Okay.
like I say, with our next cost of service study that we have until January 1st, 2020. So between now and January 1st, 2020, we've got some time to.
Right, and if
try
it
something
turns out
different.
it's 10 months or it's
Yeah.
whatever, I
Yeah, 'cause
think
it'll take a while for staff to put together a new ordinance.
Yeah.
January 3rd,
Yes, January 3rd is fine.
Okay.
Strike that from the record.
at 10 a.m.
What was I gonna say? I lost it. I'll think of it.
Because staff will need time to organize it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, would the
Implement it.
committee like to see the ordinance again before it goes to
Oh, I think
the board?
so.
Yeah, I think so
Okay,
too.
so just like
Yeah.
the bill adjustment
Yeah.
one, we'll do some
Bring it
work,
back.
we'll massage them, bring them back, get your guys' blessing with any changes, and then we'll take it forward to the board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that, did you get what you needed?
I think so.
Okay,
Make sense?
Yeah.
all right.
Okay,
Thank you for this information you've gathered together and.
that was perfect.
I would just like to suggest on these committee things, if we can ever get this just even a day ahead of time,
Yeah.
that would be very
Yeah,
beneficial.
we can do that.
Just one day.
Are there any
Pass
other
these down.
policy-related items the committee would like to see at a future meeting?
On public awareness, personnel and policy
Yeah,
committee.
anything under the purview of the committee. And you don't need to respond right now, you can just
Just
send
think
me,
about
you
it.
can
Can
send
let
me
you
your
know.
thoughts. If you think of something and say, hey, I don't think we handle this well from a policy perspective,
Well, I had lots of ideas, but since I don't think I'm on policy next year, I'm not gonna say them.
Well, we
Pass
still
them
love to
along.
hear them.
I'll think about
Pass
it.
them along.
Yeah.
Are we adjourned?
Are we?
Oh, we're adjourned.
Okay.
Bang, bang.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're gonna sit here all day long.